Donald Trump campaigned on retribution, and his allies are helping him make good on that promise. In a new report, House Republicans say Liz Cheney should be investigated over her work on the January 6th committee. In a statement on Blue Sky, Cheney said the report, quote, intentionally disregards the truth and fabricates lies in an attempt to cover up what Donald Trump did. And fresh off his settlement victory over ABC, the president-elect is now suing the Des Moines Register for running a poll that he didn't actually like. Well, Senator Chris Murphy warned today that the legal attacks that we are now seeing are all part of Donald Trump's plan to, quote, cripple our democracy. Watch what he said.
In countries where that happens, where the opposition fears going to jail, so they stay home, and the press doesn't tell the truth because they fear consequences, democracy dies. And Trump, over the last 4 days, is showing you that plan to suppress the opposition and to suppress the press. And so far, he has had stunning success even before he gets sworn in.
I want to welcome Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland. As of today, he is also the new top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. I don't know, you won this big thing that is a great big headache in the next 4 years. So I want to start, I'm so glad you're with us, and get your reaction to this warning from Senator Chris Murphy. Do you share his fears?
Well, of course, he's right that what we see is the formation of a new billionaire oligarchical class which wants to participate in government with a putative monarch and run roughshod over all the laws and the Constitution. But we've got a resilient Constitution in America that will protect both the press and political opposition, I believe. You know, they're going after Liz Cheney, talking about the fact that she spoke with one of our witnesses, Cassidy Hutchinson. Yes, that's what legislative investigators do. We talk to witnesses and we bring them forth and they testify under oath, as Cassidy Hutchinson did. And nobody has accused her, much less proven that she's told any lies. So how exactly did Liz Cheney in any way suborn perjury or coach false testimony? It's ridiculous. And that's as a matter of fact. As a matter of law, of course, everything we did in our legislative capacity, serving in an investigative committee, the January 6th Select Committee, was protected by the Speech and Debate Clause, which says that when we act as legislators, either legislating or researching or investigating, we are protected from attack by another branch of the government, by the executive branch. So I think that we've got a resilient constitutional structure. Obviously, it's being put under stress, and these guys do model themselves after Putin in Russia and Orban in Hungary and Kim Jong-un and all the other autocrats and kleptocrats of the world. But we're going to model ourselves after prior generations of American patriots who stood up for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
So if you're not worried for Liz Cheney, you know the truth, you worked with her, she'll be fine. What about this threat, right, for others going forward? If they look and say, man, look what Liz Cheney is going through. I don't want to stand up to Donald Trump. I don't want to get in the way of this and potentially be his next target. Are you worried about what's to come in the future?
Yeah, I didn't say I wasn't worried, Stephanie. I said, I'm worried, but we are taking the precautions we've got based on our constitutional system. And that's true not just for Liz Cheney and other legislative and prosecutorial investigators, but it's also true for the freedom of the press. When, Donald Trump says he's going to go after any newspaper or TV station that has said something he doesn't like, that's not the constitutional standard. The constitutional standard is New York Times versus Sullivan. Did someone deliberately tell a defamatory lie about you, a lie that either they understood not to be true or where they were deliberately reckless with respect to its veracity? That's a very tough standard. And that's why, ABC News and other media entities should not just be giving in to Donald Trump's army of lawyers that go after people. We've got to hang tough for the Constitution.
Why do you think they went after Liz Cheney? Because Adam Kinzinger was also on that committee. A number of Republicans also spoke out, testified, spoke out against Donald Trump. Why do you think Liz Cheney is the target?
Oh, they want to make an example out of her. Liz Cheney was the third most powerful Republican in the House Republican caucus. She was the chair of the Republican conference. She was a critical figure, the highest ranking woman in the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives, and she stood by the Constitution. She was a constitutional patriot, so they have to make an example out of her in order to implant fear in other people. They're trying to intimidate others, just the way they're trying to intimidate people today when Elon Musk says that he's going to fund the challengers of anybody who dares to vote for the budget agreement that the Republicans actually made with us in the House and the Senate. And so it's like Elon Musk has become the fourth branch of government, and then Donald Trump, I guess, trailing behind. He's like the fifth branch of government. But it's the oligarchs and the monarchs who are trying to dictate to the people who actually participate in the representative democratic system.
What do you think about that? Just today, Mike Johnson says he was texting with Elon Musk. What's your take on that?
Well, of course, he's got a right to text text anybody he wants to text with.
But as it relates to the spending bill, sorry, not just how are rockets doing today regarding the spending bill. Apologies.
Right. But that's what I mean. The governmental process had been working. There was real bipartisan compromise in action. We had come up with an agreement to keep the government of the United States going so people can get their VA benefits and their Social Security checks. And so the government can be doing all of the things that it does with the highways and the national parks and the museums and so on. And then one guy who happens to be the wealthiest person in the world, decides he's very willing to shut down the U.S. government if he doesn't get his way, after the whole legislative process has been taking place successfully for the last 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, and both parties gave, and there was a compromise, and yet this new branch of government erupts, and then nobody knew where Donald Trump was until he said, well, yeah, go ahead and renegotiate it, and, I would like to see some changes to what is it he decided he wanted to do here? Lift the credit limit, I think, is what he wanted to do. He said he didn't want to do it under the Trump administration. He wants to do it under the Biden administration. He wanted to accomplish that, so that would be blamed on the Democrats. I mean, this is just pure chaos. And I got to tell you that a lot of us in Congress looking at it, living through it, are coming to the conclusion that chaos is not some incidental byproduct of some coherent political agenda they have. Chaos is the point. Chaos is the whole objective here. And that does feel like authoritarianism, when they want to destroy democratic institutions and democratic processes and replace it with chaos. There are a lot of people who are going to be hurt by this.
It was that Steve Bannon interview, what was it, 7 years ago, when he said we want to blow the whole thing up and burn it down. Philip, I think you had a question. Yeah,
the Congressman Philip Bump from the Washington Post. Your old sparring partner on House Oversight, James Comer, had an interview today. He obviously is one of the central people pushing for the impeachment of Joe Biden based on what Hunter Biden had done. And he said this, he was asked if he was going to hold the same standard for President Trump. He said this: as long as President Trump is transparent, I think the American people will give him a pass on his business activity. But if it ever comes out he's got secret deals or whatever, then that could potentially be a problem, obviously, with the deal. I was curious what your thoughts on that were.
Well, if you take the Foreign Emoluments Clause, Phil, for example, it says that nobody in federal government, including the president, shall accept a present, an emolument, which means a payment, an office or a title of any kind, whatever, from a foreign state king or prince. And yet we know that Donald Trump, when he was in office, accepted at least $8 million from the Chinese government, from the Royal Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, from the United Arab Emirates, from Indonesia, and so on. Whether he does that publicly or privately, it doesn't make any difference. It's against the Constitution. He can't do that. And it looks like it's going to be even worse this time. Now he feels completely unrestrained and uninhibited and unaccountable. And he's just going to stay in business, and he'll be collecting perhaps not millions or hundreds of millions, but billions of dollars, the way that his son-in-law Jared Kushner did when he brought back a cool $2 billion from Saudi Arabia right after the first Trump administration ended. So It's not the case that just because you rob a bank in broad daylight, it's illegal to rob a bank. You can't do it secretly. You can't embezzle secretly, but you can't rob it in broad daylight either. So it's not a question of secrecy. The White House cannot be a money-making operation for the president and his family.